Hello viewers, welcome to my channel, Sensor 360 Investor. Quick word about the disclaimer, please read this. And in today's video, we're going to focus on what are the best countries to invest in. Most of you will be investing in the United States, since that is the largest market. Let's have a look, in addition to the United States, other opportunities that we might want to take a look at. Okay, so if we look at the global world map, there's a lot of countries that we can choose to invest in. Now, practically some of these are not investable because some actually don't have a stock market. But of the UN recognized countries, there are 193 recognized countries. There are some countries that are not recognized, but they are countries self-declared. They have all the the flags, the constitutions, etc. But they're just not recognized by the UN. And so from this, we need to figure out how can we decide what countries we may want to consider for investing internationally. So one way is to take a look at some of the more well-known countries or the larger countries. So a lot of these countries are either part of the G7 or the G20. Some of these are well-known Western countries, but there's plenty here that may be new to you or you may not be aware of. Still, how do we decide is the key question. So we can break it into some analytical factors. We look at vectors and factors, and we can also use the work from Adam Smith from his book, The Wealth of Nations. And so we can come up with some quantitative factors. And so the first three vectors to consider: land, labor, capital. That's a traditional way of looking at countries. Within land, we can look at geographic size. Labor, we can look at population size. We can also look at demographics. You can drill down further into labor. Capital, we can look at GDP, PPP, or nominal. We can also look at reserves. And for this exercise, we'll take a look at gold reserves. And then in addition to land, labor, capital, we can also take a look at hard power, which most people rank with how strong a country is based on its military. But there's also soft power. Now, soft power, there's many factors within soft power, but one proxy we can look at is the diaspora of a country. And we can develop some of these others for another time, but I wanted to give a quick way for you to be able to analyze countries and start to whittle them down into a smaller set that you can review. Okay, so let's use these. And so I've got a table here. And what I'm going to do now is we'll line up in terms of the vectors, which are down the left-hand side, and then we'll create the ranks. And the ranks I took from various publications, whether it's from the IMF or the World Banks and well-known government bodies like that. Okay, so let's have a look. So in terms of, we'll start with land. So the biggest country is Russia, and then that's followed by Canada, China, USA, Brazil. So not too many surprises here until you get towards the end. I mean, Algeria brings up the 10th spot. And in terms of population, China and India are level pegged at the moment. So this will probably change the next time I do this. Then on to the USA, Indonesia. And we've got quite a few countries represented from the various continents. And then in terms of GDP, PPP, so this is the broader measure. So we can see China, USA, and India top of the list, followed by Japan. So none of these are really big surprises. And then by nominal, you got the USA leads the pack. And so we have some of the European nations here from the G7. And at the time that I took this snapshot, South Korea was bubbling at 10. And then in terms of gold reserves, so this is like what the story. This is an interesting one because most of these countries, with the exception of Switzerland, have been former empires of some sort. And we have the Dutch Empire, and you can see the Germans and the Italians and the French, the Russians. So this is where all the world's gold is. In terms of military power, so not surprising there with the USA, China, Russia, and then you go India, Japan, South Korea. And then in terms of space power, so the top four. And then we can't ignore the nukes, so of the countries. So those are all countries that have nukes. And then for diaspora, so basically what this means is people of that country's origin who have settled abroad or live abroad or long-term residence abroad, they may have emigrated some time ago. So India, Mexico, Russia, surprisingly China, and then we have some variants there. So this now gives us a way to take a look at which countries we can then start to home in on. And one way is to see, which country occurs the most in terms of counts. Like, for example, if we look at the vector number one rank, we can see the USA has 4 flags here. So it's definitely a high count. And then if we go one over to the second place, the USA has 2 more. So basically first or second, the USA, is pretty much, if we go one more, the USA's third there. So if we look at the top 3, you can see the USA's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 spots out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's definitely USA would score very highly. So we can use the same methodology to take a look at this and see what we have. So I took the overall counts, and we can see the USA out of 9 has 8. So it's the diaspora where they lost a point, but Russia has 8, China has 9, India has 9. So these were the highest counting countries. And so the index for the USA is obviously the S&P 500. And I've marked this blue because the chances are, especially if you are US based or if you're in the global north, you are likely to be already investing or invested in the USA. So this is kind of your home country from an investing standpoint. If we look at Russia, Russia's now uninvestable if you are part of the global north. You could probably still invest in Russia if you're part of the global south. And MOEX is the Russian index. If we look at China, China certainly has been a place to invest up until the last couple of years. Their index is the Shanghai Composite, but it's a bit more higher risk now. So a lot of people are kind of shying away from wanting to invest in China. So off the top 4, then we're left with one other country, which is India, when their index is the BSE Sensex and Bombay Stock Exchange Sensex. So out of the top 4 counts, this is what so you're most likely already invested here. And then this is uninvestable for most countries now. Shanghai Composite, this one most people are shying away from. So then your alternative kind of boils down to India. However, before we finalize on that, let's also take a look at some of the other countries that were kind of in 5th place, but they were distant 5th place. So you have Japan, France, and the United Kingdom. And so all of these are pretty wealthy countries, and certainly well developed. So those can be considered. But if you want to try and pick out big winners and unicorns and startups and 10 baggers, then probably from an investment standpoint, the place to look at is India. Now you can do a deeper dive than the quick analysis grid that I did, and I'll I'll keep this updated. I'll do a regular update on how these countries shift, because they do kind of come in and out, and especially with the current economic climate globally, we know that there will be shifts in which countries ranks where in the GDPs, etc. But in the case of India, you can then start to take a look at further factors, like on the hard side. You can look at the number of billionaires, the number of unicorns, foreign direct investment. India is the number one source in the world for that. You can also look at the infrastructure build outs, development of seaports for trading routes. INST is the International North-South Trading Corridor, which allows India to transit goods from north into the country, and then obviously it's at the epicenter of global trade routes geographically. Then on the soft side, we looked at the diaspora, but you could start to break down the soft side into, I mean, in the case of India, you could argue certainly yoga, Holi, all well-known soft power events, cultural events. It's also home to four of the 7 largest world religions. 4 of them started out from India. Prominent film industry, we know, food and spices. It has one of the 7 wonders of the world. It's currently the chair of the UNSC, of the non-permanent group of 10. And then in December, it picks up the chair of the G20 and also the Shanghai Cooperation. So these give it a global platform in terms of soft power. So these can be developed further. And also, as you look at alternative countries, whether it's Japan or Russia or the United Kingdom, you can use something like this to break it down further from there. Okay, so that wraps up the best countries to invest in. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will do regular updates on this because I think it's fascinating, and one should take a look at international exposure by looking at companies that are in countries outside of the United States, for example. So that concludes it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.